It's the Sod Pod. Brought to you by Grassland Agro. The Sod Pod. Hello, and welcome to the Sod Pod. This is episode 6. I was unavailable this week, so fair play. Johnny, Lauren, Ed and Eoin caught up and did a great chat. Have a listen.
We got some data there from Taggets about, I suppose, the amount of nitrogen that's been applied on farms. So these are all dairy farms, a little bit of a survey. And I suppose it's quite striking, but very understandable. And they surveyed a decent cohort of farms and found that only 27% of farms have any nitrogen spread. And on those farms, on those 27, only 36 kilos of nitrogen has been spread, which is a good bit below maybe what we'd be talking about in a normal year. Now, this is perfectly understandable considering, I suppose, we had a very wet autumn and that carried into a really wet spring, above average rainfall for February. And March has been really, really tricky. We had a couple of dry days there last weekend, Ed, and we thought we were over the worst of it. But this week again is really, really trying, and it's creating a good few issues on farm.
Yes, look, it's not surprising, John, when you look at the amount of rainfall that we're after having. Like, realistically, we're probably after having 10 months of rain. It hasn't just bad for the last 2 weeks. And look, this probably is going to have knock-on effects to grazing down the line, because really we're coming up to the 2nd of April here now, and if you're to look at the spring rotation planner, traditionally around the first week of April is due to be the first round of grazing, or the start of the second round of grazing, whereas in actual fact now we have a huge cohort of farmers out there that haven't started grazing. We have others that might have 30% grazed, and then we have others that might have 70% grazed. So there's a massive variation depending on farm type out there. And look, I suppose the traditional train of thought there was that we should probably have close to 70 units of nitrogen out by the end of April, and the knock-on effect that might have during the grazing season, will be in terms of regrowths, in terms of chlorophyll content and photosynthesis, and actually converting energy in the plants might be slightly slower. But look, we can't change the weather, John, unfortunately. It's very, very tricky out there. Very, very tricky in terms of grazing.
It's a big challenge. From chatting to lots of farmers, that silage stocks are very, very low. I see a lot of bales moving around. See a lot of silage traders going with pit silage, even moving it from place to place. And it is very tricky, but I suppose the fact that that's going on highlights, like, priority number one at the moment is feeding the cow and making sure that the cow is fed, because breeding is only around the corner. And I suppose the concentrate levels it's taken are quite significant, but there's other problems with slurry and maybe getting slurry out, and that's been a big challenge, and grass is heavy in a lot of farms as well. What's it like maybe up the north, Eoin, and maybe in around Kilkenny for you, Lauren?
From my own point of view, John, I suppose in the north, you're right, there's definitely considerable covers in parts. From a slurry perspective, definitely it has not been got out across the board where it needs to be got out. It is true that, look, that recent bout of rain that we've had now, it's really, really been to the detriment of the ground conditions. Look, I suppose in terms of silage stocks, we would traditionally gear ourselves towards that longer housing period. So we're maybe not just running as tight from that point of view, which is good. But equally, there's added pressure. If you take it the multi-cut system, really from mid-April onwards, certain enterprises would traditionally be looking to take that first cut, which is hard to believe that it's right around the corner. Look, in terms of the fertilizer side of things too, there's been parts where the first round of nitrogen has been got out. To be fair, it's probably been a fight to get that bit out that has been applied. But look, we'll certainly be looking to hit the ground running as soon as conditions, by laws of averages, you think that have to improve. even from a reseeding perspective, it'd be nice to get ground into order. But we're looking to hit the ground running once conditions would improve. But yeah, look, certainly challenges. We'll have to just adapt ourselves to accommodate, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. No, look, there's similar conditions, I suppose, all around Ireland at the moment. Kilkenny is no different. I suppose, look, it's just very challenging, and just trying to make the most of the situation that we have and trying to hit the ground running as best we can, I suppose. What slurry has gone out now is probably, certain fields are probably getting hit again because perhaps they were fields that were travelable at the time. Probably are getting hit once, twice, maybe 3 times now because tanks are getting full. And I suppose that might have a knock-on effect of other fields that can't get slurry now at the moment. So I suppose that's going to have a knock-on effect. The amount of those figures of Teagasc 27% nitrogen spread at the moment, like, that's worrying enough. Like, you know, we're coming into breeding season. Is that going to have a knock-on effect in terms of animal thrive, and I suppose what effects is that going to have coming into the breeding season, I suppose, is a worry for farmers at the moment. And yeah, look, there is a bit of silage on the go at the moment, but it's getting hard to source it as well as the other issues. So just keeping an eye on everything. Yeah,
it's a big one, and like, I suppose, Lauren, like, you know, it is very tricky, and we really sympathise. We're out on farm, and our team are on farm every single day, and we know the struggles, and we're on farm ourselves that farmers are facing, whether it's slurry. But I suppose it's making sure that the cows are fed as well as possible and all stock are fed as well as possible is very, very important. Breeding's around the corner, and there's 2 potential issues here. It's the fact that we're maybe short in silage at the moment. We have to come up with a strategy to feed them, but then there's also the aspect that there's a lot of grass on farm. But when we get out and graze that, the fact that we don't have any nitrogen out, we could actually run into being a little bit tight in grass when we start into that second round, in whatever form or whatever period it may be. So that's very important, I suppose, when the weather does improve, that we maybe get the nitrogen out, because if we don't have the clover, and irrespective if we have the clover, we're going to have to make sure that we try and definitely get as much feed into the yard as possible this year. And I think that needs to be a priority on every farm, that those silage stocks are replenished, because we had a very early housing, and we've had a very long spring. So silage is in short demand, and maybe like what do farmers need to be thinking about to try and get that, or what's the strategy in your own opinion, Ed? Like, you know, there's a lot of farmers that ideally would have liked to graze silage ground but won't now. Would you spread that with a full rate of nitrogen? Would you go with a half rate, or is there different strategies that could be taken?
I suppose it totally depends what the farmers are looking to get out of it, whether they're looking to go for quality, you know, or they're looking to go for quantity. In my own opinion, every farmer really should be trying to look for quality especially in terms of their first cut silage, because if you have the quality there, it's very easy to tone down the quality of it by mixing in straw. You know, if you're trying to keep animals, are you trying to keep condition on animals, or try to keep them in the right condition bracket when they're going to calve down? If you don't have the quality, it's very, very hard to actually turn it up if you do need to feed off of it when you're milking, from that point of view. So, look, I think it's totally going to depend on the sort of covers that are on silage ground at the moment. If there's very, very, very big covers on them that have not been cleaned off since the back end, I would be probably leaning towards taking a half rate of silage manure, and maybe taking an early cut and try to go for a very, very good quality second cut. And if we have paddocks that have been grazed but have not had a chance to get out with slurry because of the weather conditions, obviously, I think we need to be looking at higher NPK fertilizers really, because it's getting very, very close to the period now where we need to be looking at getting out silage manure. So I would be kind of recommending to go 1:1 with your nitrogen and your potash, if possible. If where guys are not getting slurry out, so if you're going 80 units of nitrogen, 80 units of K would be a fairly good rule of thumb, and to make sure to get in plenty of sulfur to try and maximize the use of the nitrogen that we're getting out, and hopefully try to drive up the protein content of the feed that we're getting. But look, very, very tricky at the moment, and I know people are going to be limited in the places that they can go with slurry at the minute, but we really need to be focused and looking at where we're going to build those feed reserves for next year. But we also need to be looking at the same thing when we're talking about our grazing platform, because as you said, and as Lauren said, we could run into difficulty coming into the second round this year as well with the small quantities of nitrogen that have gone out. So I think the advice that we've been given over the last couple of podcasts, looking at using light as a source of fertilizer for plants, can't be neglected. We really need to get those paddocks grazed out, get light into the base of the sward. But that needs to be done in a way that's going to feed the animal properly, avoid damage in paddocks, while also meeting those residuals, which won't be straightforward now after all the rain. So, yeah, look, not simple, John, but I think we need to be flexible, really, and adapt to the conditions that we have on every farm.
Yeah, I think you're right, Ed. I think the residual, to be honest, and like John Maher will kill me for saying this one, but it's nearly out the window. Like, you're trying to get grass into the cow from a nutrition point of view and get it cleaned off. And if it's raining overhead, it's next to impossible to stop them doing a decent bit of damage. So getting them in and out as quickly as possible and taking whatever you get is a very fine balance. And I would be saying in that instance, get as much grass into the cow as possible, and then come back and do a decent job of trying to correct that when you're coming later on in the season. Like, I think that the strip wire could be up for maybe a little bit longer this grazing season. And then I suppose there's just one other thing in relation to the grazing side of it, Ed, that I think, and it hadn't really dawned on me, but there'll be a lot of farms that never have an issue with fluke, but because it has just been so wet, I think it may be no harm anywhere there have been people trying to graze, maybe to do a test and see if there possibly is a burden there, because that would not be ideal to have a burden when you're coming into the breeding season as well, because ground has been so wet. And the other side of it as well, in my opinion, lads, is that when we're doing little bits of damage in the first round, if the weather comes bad, if the weather comes middling at all for the second round of grazing, we cannot afford to do any damage, or else we're going to really punish those swards. Like, swards will recover from one bit of damage, but a second significant piece of damage on those swards is going to really affect them. But I suppose we're talking an awful lot about maybe cows and grazing and dairy. I suppose, Lauren, on the dry stock and maybe the sheep side, it's tough out weather on lambs as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely hasn't been an easy, or a lot of people are in the middle of their lambing season now. It hasn't been an easy season so far. Weather conditions were tricky to get stock in, dry, and it's tricky to get stock out at the moment. Like, you'd want fairly hardy lambs now at the moment to survive those weather conditions at the moment. So yeah, it's not easy at the moment.
Yeah.
I suppose you have issues if you can't get stock out. You have issues with disease spreading in sheds. So it's just really keeping an eye on what you can control as best as possible in the shed and in the environment. But look, scanning rates were quite good. There's the price of lamb at the moment is quite good. It's increased a lot. Yeah, it's increased a lot, I suppose, from this time last year. I think it was only just over €6 a kilo, whereas now it's up to €8 a kilo. Do you know, so it's really good if we could keep it going that way
Yeah.
for the rest of the year. It'd be great, but yeah, look, it's been tough conditions, but I suppose with the scanner rates being so good, and with particularly bad weather, last year, it's a surprise that it's as good as it is. Do you know, it hasn't been easy on ewes in particular, and I suppose on ewes that maybe are a little bit lacking in body condition, coming into the lambing season this year and now after lambing, I suppose it's just to focus on those and try keep an eye on them, feed them a little bit better, and yeah, no, look, it's going well overall now. In fairness, if we can just get stock out at the moment and keep the prices as high as they are, we'd be happy.
Yeah, and a lot of farmers maybe in the slightly later, mid to late lambing flocks, I suppose they would have thought the weather would be an awful lot better, so it's tricky for them as well. But Lauren, maybe just to stay with you for a sec there on the tillage. I suppose tillage has been really tricky. If you go back, we had Shay on there and we were saying, like, you know, listen, if you can, up until Valentine's Day, you could get away with winter wheat. That went out the window because the weather came so bad. We were thinking at that stage it'll have to improve. Then I suppose there's a big scramble. There was a massive scramble on at that time as well to try and get spring barley seed. I suppose the oats maybe, like spring and winter oats are the same variety actually. Husky and Bar are probably the two most well-known varieties, and like it's probably getting very late for oats as well. And then even for spring barley, it's going to be tricky as well. Like, so it maybe there's huge challenge there for the tillage side of the house as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's definitely, look, I feel like with the weather, it's an ongoing saga at the moment all across the board. So, yeah, look, it's probably too late for the wheat, borderline for the oats as well. Even beans, I know there was one or two people that I would know that were questioning whether they could go with beans at the moment. It's probably pushing on a little bit for those as well. You could get away maybe in the next week, but it's not looking weather permitting. I suppose from the spring barley perspective, yeah, like, look, there was a scarcity of getting even seed there for a while, and now, look, like most farmers or most tillage farmers or contractors would have a lot of their ploughing done. I know maybe 2 years ago we ourselves were sowing spring barley. The weather was, the sun was shining, the weather was good. We haven't anything ploughed at the moment. There's very few that have anything ploughed. Anywhere that is ploughed, then I suppose questionable whether it should have been ploughed or shouldn't have been ploughed at the time. It was very, very soft. And yeah, look, it's just, I think probably the percentage of spring barley that's going to go in is probably going to be back a little bit, or even if it's the same, I think farmers are going to be under pressures and contractors under pressure to get it in, I suppose. And especially then with the new register coming, look, there's an extra stress there of do we have a phosphorus allowance to go with when we're sowing, is another thing that we have to keep an eye on as well, which is difficult for the tillage farmers, because I suppose, look, traditionally we would have went with an NPK compound, and look, we might just be restricted on that now if our soil fertility is good. So it's just keeping an eye on it, I suppose, and hopefully weather conditions will pick up, really, John.
Yeah, you're right, Lauren, because we're being very doom and gloom here, but like, you know, farmers are very proactive and they're trying to say, okay, what can we do? So what can we do about it? And I think you're right. I think that we are late, things are delayed, things are bad, but they will improve. And we need to make sure that we have the fertilizer in the yard to be ready to go with it to try and grow the best crop possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there's always alternatives there that we can go with something else, you know. They are quite adaptive, and farmers, look, it always gets sown in the end. There's always something every year that crops up, and we think that we won't get it in the ground, and we eventually get it in the ground. I suppose beet as well, there mightn't be as much beet that it's going to go into land at the moment. And look, I suppose anyone that's maybe looking at putting in an alternative crop, maybe just do a bit of research and realise maybe even for like a beet crop, for example, some people mightn't really realise the amount of fertiliser that it takes to grow a crop of beet, like, you know. So I suppose just getting organised, getting your seed organised, getting fertiliser in the yard for tillage, especially silage ground as well. I know I'm hopping back to grass and a little bit, but look, we can only do what we can really, but it's just getting organised and coming up with an alternative option if all goes to all.
Definitely, Lauren. I think you're right. I think getting that fertiliser organised so that it's there and you can get going ASAP, because a lot of farmers would have generally gone with that St. Patrick's Day application. So I think you're 100% right. Making sure that we're able to have that ready to go is very, very important. And in reality, while things are tricky, they will come good. And in the short term, all we need to do is make sure that we're looking after the cows and the stock as best as possible, and ourselves, to make sure that everyone is going as well as they can be, and make sure that Clare beat Kilkenny in the league final now as well is going to be absolutely
Oh, I was waiting for it.
So that'll be something to look forward to, as they say.
Absolutely.
On that note, we'll have to end the sod pod here now, because John is starting to talk about Clare hurling.
Yeah, well, listen, I don't think we're going as well as we could be, but at the same time, we're still in the final, and it's only in March still. So, listen, we're not too worried about the league, to be perfectly honest with you, lads. We're both on the Munster Championship, but if we win it, well,
John,
if not, whatever.
I don't know if Clare were good at the weekend, or Tipperary were just so bad that it made Clare look good. So I don't know now. I wouldn't get your hopes up.
No, I think you're right. I don't think we were firing on all cylinders, but we don't want to be at this stage. Like, we have a big match coming up there at the end of April with the Limerick Villains. So, no, definitely very important that we're right for that one. So, that's the most important one. And Dublin and Tyrone went well as well, Owen.
Appreciate that, John. Yeah, it was a flyer. Yeah, it was a brilliant result across the board now, to be fair. But as you say, John, it's only the league. Early days.
Yeah, it is only the league. It is only the league, lads. And going back to the farming for a second, I suppose the figures are quite startling there with the lack of nitrogen, but they're understandable. The grazing is very, very tricky. I think, Ed, your strategy there with maybe taking an early cut could be a good job to clean off some of those swards. I seen silage cut in Kilkenny on Saturday last week, so like that and that's bonkers, but in some people's eyes, but it's probably a good strategy to try and clear it off, get slurry out and drive on with it. And there's lots of challenges coming down the line, but we need to be picking ourselves up for breeding, making sure if you're bringing in maybe silage that you're covering them off for minerals as well. I know there's probably a lot of meal going in, but a lot of the trace elements as well could be lacking, and putting in the old mineral block there mightn't be a bad shout.
I think that's a really important point, though. Like, a key at the moment there has to be to maintain the condition score of the animals, like at the minute, and it's very, very difficult done when animals are still in. But I know lots of farmers out there that are feeding anything between 6 and 8 kilos at the minute, but it kind of has to be done if we want to get animals or keep animals in good condition to try and get them back in calf, over the next period. So I think that has to be a priority now going forward, maintaining that body condition score and doing whatever you need to do to feed the animal the way it needs.
Yeah, 6 or 8 kilos is probably only a dry cow diet for Owen, but
Owen will have that for breakfast.
Yeah,
that's arguably the lower scale. The lower scale, John.
Yeah, very much.
I suppose that's the danger of buying.
Out of the ordinary down here.
Yeah, of course it is. But look, that's whenever you're at the mercy of buying in fodder, you can't. It's the old saying goes, beggars can't be choosers. So yeah, keeping on top of the mineral profile, particularly from your own point of view in the breeding season, is going to be key. Particularly, look, if keeping an eye on the phos end of it too, as we know, it's key. But look, it's like, I think within agriculture, John, there's nothing that we haven't encountered before that will not be able to adapt to suit. I suppose the other thing that I would say would be a practical step at this point in time would be, from the slurry point of view, maybe keeping a conscious note of, say, what sedge ground didn't get slurry. If we think about it from a maintenance perspective, a good coconut slurry is going to sort of maintain that level of P's and K's for an average offtake. So really what we don't want to do is deplete that. I look at it like a bank account. There's no point having a bank account or an ATM card that you're withdrawn without putting back. So certainly you talked earlier about maybe looking forward even into next back end to secure enough fodder, not to be in a position that we've actually depleted indexes. So if that's the case, just maybe keeping a note of what where Stroud didn't get to, and maybe being a bit more proactive as the year moves forward, when conditions improve. But yeah, certainly we'll have to just make with what we can do at the present time and go from there. I suppose is all you can really do.
What's in the news?
Yeah, so for what's in the news this week, I suppose we've decided actually to go with the Grass 10 newsletter. So basically, there's an awful lot of talk about clover at the moment, and Chagas and the Grass 10 team have decided to do clover walks over the next couple of weeks, and we're actually going to have two of the team on next time we're on the Sod Pod as well. So listen, it's really, really important. There's a lot of different information going to be covered, and I suppose some of the topical issues that are at the forefront of every farmer's mind and that we've discussed today ourselves are going to be covered as well. So Ed, you were doing a bit of a video on this as well. It looks like it's going to be a good week.
Yeah, look, the walks are kicking off on the 3rd of April, actually starting down in Moore Park, with some of the research that has come out on clover, but they're going on all the way up as far as the 17th of April across a lot of counties in the country. It's going to be very interesting, John. All the latest info on clover, the revised fertilizer strategies depending on clover content in the sward. I think it's a must go now for anybody that's actually trying to actively cut the amount of chemical fertilizer that's going on to farms and probably improve the quality of the grazing swards that are out there on people's farms. So I think it's a must go for people around the country that are looking at clover.
Brilliant, Ed. I think it's going to be really, really important. Follow on from Mike Egan's appearance on the Sod Pod as well, and we're going to have Caitlin and Joe on, and I think clover has a big role to play going forward, but it'll be great to get those practical on-farm events to see how to establish, how to keep it, how to fertilise it, how to graze it, and I know it's at a tricky time, but hopefully there'll be good attendance.
Look, if anyone is interested in attending any of these clover walks, the information can be found on the Grass 10 Twitter page. It can be found online on the Chagas website. There is plenty of clover walks on there, so I think if people are interested in that sort of thing, definitely get out and get to these clover walks, and you should learn a lot, like in terms of the most recent research.
A huge thanks to the guys there. That was very insightful. Mind yourselves out there. Farm smart, farm safe. Hey, thanks for listening to the Sod Pod. We hope you enjoyed it. To find out more, head over to www.grasslandagro.ie or check out our social channels: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn and YouTube. That's all for this episode. See you next time.